meeting of the Waste Management District Board to order at 5:31 p.m. Welcome everybody, welcome board members and anybody else who happens to be online with us. First item of business will be the approval of minutes of the January 26, 2022 meeting. Has everybody had a chance to peruse those minutes? And if so, does anybody have any corrections, changes, additions?
Pete, I'll move approval. I'm sorry. I'll move approval. Bob?
It's all right. We have Mary Rose motion for approval. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Petra, I'll second.
Petra, second. We have a motion and a second for approval. Is there any other discussion, questions, comments? Yes.
I really enjoyed reading the minutes and reviewing what we covered in the meeting. I thought a great deal was done, and I found it was very interesting reading, going over the minutes.
Who do we thank for that, Amy?
Susan Hart.
Susan. No, I mean, who do we thank for the minutes?
That'd be Pete.
Pete,
That'd be
okay.
Thank you, Pete. Good job.
So we have a motion for approval, motion and a second for approval. No other discussion. All those in favor of approving the January 26th meeting minutes signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing no nays, meetings for the minutes for the January 26th meeting are approved. Next item of business is budget report. Pete?
Okay, so everybody see the screen? I hate to keep asking that, but can't assume. Okay, so here we are, 223. We have revenues of 1,210,170, which is 89% of what our budget estimate was. That only includes the recycling receipts and the license fees and citations. So we are running well ahead of where we need to be. And I would anticipate us being probably somewhere in 120% on that, on revenue by the end of the fiscal year. Total expenses, we're still running a little bit light. We did get a couple of invoices from Veolia today, which would be probably about another 20,000 coming off of that. So we're running a little bit behind on that. But one thing that I would point out that I didn't point out in the last meeting, the 370,000 for contractual services, I believe includes some additional funds. Let me take it back. I'll get back with you. I don't want to tell you something that's not correct. And then the final balance with the rollover from last year of 1,020,664 and the miscellaneous money of 1.1 million gives us a balance of $2,742,519. We have one expense over $5,000, and that's going to be the payment for the truck, the front load truck, which is $6,026.40 is what we were billed. But it includes some fees that should not be there, so we are going back to try to make that adjustment. So that should be $5,022. You should see that reflected hopefully in the next report next month. So that's our only expense. It's an expense that you guys have already pre-approved when you approve the purchase of the vehicle. So I don't think that we need a motion for approval on this. and I can take any questions about our budget.
Pete, I have a question. That's a substantial amount of money, and it feels good to have that kind of money. But I'm just wondering if we should put it to use some way, at least maybe partially, uh, so that we get some interest or some kind of financial assistance with that. Or can we do that as a district? Are we capable of putting it into something?
You're talking about putting it in like a interest bearing account?
Yes, I am.
It's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. I know that because it's in the Metro budget accounting system and the way that they classify these funds, I'm not sure if we have the ability to say, we want to take some of this money, put it into this account. I can find out though.
You can find out. This is Director Burns. I do not believe you can do that, Pete, but you can check. But I don't believe you can do that. I think all funds go through Metro. And I'm sure they might do something with it in turn, not just these funds, but other funds. But I think they have to be segregated.
I'd agree. They do have to be segregated. They're restricted to the waste district. They're not capital funds. They're not, they're operating funds. And I just don't think that after you set something that you can move it out of that account. Yeah, I think it's complicated and more than I know. So I would rather go to the people that can give me the answer on that, Bob. But I think it's a good question. I would love to.
Yeah, I think all of us would.
Mhm.
Any other questions on the budget? Okay, moving on. Next item on the agenda, or we move on to the action items. Next item on the agenda being the renewal of the MOA with Metro government.
So we started to talk about this last month. It is a straight copy from the previous MOA that we have in existence. I think there was some, you guys wanted some extra time to take a look at it and review it. So it's basically, we're back under consideration for this document. So I would ask that the board approve it as it's written.
Do we have any questions or comments on that? This basically, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, just to note that if we were to try to, if the waste district were to try to buy something, you know, the OMB is really funny without an MOA in place. So that was one of the things that happened when we were trying to do something, and the MOA has to be in place even to accept the money, I think. So they did it, but that's one of the reasons I think that we have to have an MOA in place.
And
I think a lot of it relies on the fact that we are a state authorized board, but we don't have, or at least the way it was set up through originally Jefferson County government, now Metro government, we can do business by doing it through Metro and not therefore having all the extra expenses of having staff that it would take to administer a budget like that. And basically Metro does all of our footwork for us.
Right.
And do I understand from having read what was in the PDFs that Pete sent out that this is a 3-year agreement?
Yes.
Okay, but it also says that during that period of time, there is the ability to amend the agreement if needed.
That is correct.
Okay, so it sounds like we're in good shape to go ahead and approve it.
Yes, if either party wishes to make an amendment, they make a request to the other party to open it up to do so. And
Thank
then
you.
have the discussion.
Bob, just to get it on the floor, I would like to make a motion that we agree to enter this MOA with Metro.
Okay, thank you, Mary Rose. We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second. This is Debbie Thompson.
Have a motion by Deborah to second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion, comments, questions on this item? Okay, hearing none. Pete, with this being an action item, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Let's see. Robert Lee,
Yes, I'd just like to say that I appreciate the time to look over it, and with the additional time, I approve the MOA.
Carl Brazley,
I approve.
Deborah Thompson,
I approve.
Mary Rose Evans,
I approve.
Mary Hart,
I approve.
Deetra Shipley,
I approve.
Robert Shin.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous.
Okay, thank you all very much. Next item from staff is a request for proposals for the No Waste Louisville Education and Outreach Campaign. Pete, Pete or Karen, you wanna?
Well, I would like to start off by saying that this is in your packet and for your review. Should have received it a couple of days ago. In any way, I'm going to let Karen kind of go through the MOA. Karen, if you need me to pull up the actual document, just let me know, or if you want to share your own screen.
Okay. Yes, so we have an RFP written up, and we did talk about this at the advisory committee, and now with their approval and discussion, we're bringing it on up to you guys. The document that you received is a portion of the entire RFP because it is a template and it's lengthy. So the specification section is the main part that we actually have control over to write out what we're looking for. So the scope of work is there on the screen. That is what we have written currently in this RFP, which is that the awarded contractor shall provide an ongoing public education and outreach campaign covering a wide array of solid waste management issues, utilizing a variety of strategies, and this can renew over several years. So our idea is that there's an overarching theme of put waste in its place. As you probably recall, the solid waste study had 11 educational strategies and recommendations. So we believe that having something like this in place can actually fulfill some of the portions of the different recommendations that were in the study. And also it goes right along with the district's mission, which is listed in the actual RFP of background information. So if you looked over it, the first, aside from scope of work, the biggest section is kind of giving anyone who wants to make fill out the proposal, giving them the background of what we are already doing and kind of understanding the just the background of our agency and our purpose. So, and that just kind of includes our educational objectives and the components that we currently use. So the actual campaign that we would like to have done, the objectives are there on the screen. And so we would like the overall message of disposing waste in the proper place with a tagline such as put waste in its place. because we know that a lot of our messages that we want promoted, maybe it involves not littering, preventing littering in all kinds of ways, preventing illegal dumping, or recycling correctly, putting the correct items in your recycling bin, disposing of hazardous waste correctly. So a lot of our mission has to do with just putting waste in its correct place. So we thought if we had that overarching theme, then smaller campaigns can be targeted to certain, not only certain messages, but also targeted to certain audiences. So the elements of this campaign would include designing and creating some of that material and purchasing advertising time, whether it's TV, social media, even print or outdoor advertising, radio, whatever it is. So all of this, it would include the actual purchase of the ads. And then because they're the contractor would be a professional at this, they can also give us reports and we can understand what's working, what isn't, make adjustments, especially if we continue on year over year. So let's see, are there, what am I missing, Pete? Or are there any questions or discussion?
Well, Karen, will this RFP yield a bottom line price for whoever is chosen to do this program, or will it be more along of an hourly listing of prices for performance, and then we call on them to do what we want them to do?
Well, that is something I wanted to just kind of discuss and make sure that you all are okay with, as far as including an approximate contractor budget in this RFP. I think we've discussed before how with advertising and promotional things, it can be difficult because you can kind of put a certain amount of money towards something. So we would like for the proposal to include an outline that of a suggested way to spend those funds, which we listed as 100,000 in our draft. And that would be for the entire year. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
What I would add is that because, this isn't, if you guys approve this RFP, it's not money spent.
Right,
it's only money kind of encumbered, so that we know that if we want to go to the well and have someone do this work, we already have them in place to do it. And anything that we would ask them to do would certainly be coming before the board again anyway. So this is kind of like an umbrella contract that we have something there to assist. And this is another point. It's to assist our education team and help them amplify the messages that we have. So our team is the experts in the field when it comes to trying to get the word out. They are just going to help us amplify this message. They can do more of the work. They can do less of the work. This contract gives us the ability to pick and choose what we want them to do. So we did kind of model this after CARE, which is from the Air Pollution Control District. We just modified it for our own benefit. So it's an RFP that's been out several years. And, the advisory committee gave us some very good suggestions, and we made some tweaks here and there. We believe that it's a good one. And as Karen said, this is only only the specifications. The rest of it is a boilerplate bid package, which is probably another 25 pages long. If anybody is interested in seeing the full package when we put it together.
And as a matter of process, you all will issue this RFP. You all will get responses to the RFP. You all will make a suggested selection of a contractor, and then you will then bring that back to the board with your reasons for choosing that contractor vis-a-vis what they proposed in the way of programs, what have you, and then it will still ultimately be this board's decision as to whether to hire that contractor, correct?
That's correct, Bob.
Yeah, and the one thing that I would like to say about doing this in an RFP format is it does give us the ability to meet with bidders to clarify and ask questions and to modify. So it does give us, because it's an RFP, it gives us an ability for making sure that we're going to get what we want.
I didn't mean to monopolize the questions. Any other questions from board members?
Bob, I have a comment. I want to say that I'm very excited about this. I think this is our primary job as a board, is to educate the public. Karen said 11 of the points in the study were about education. We direct this. I think it's a really good idea to do this and have professionals come in and they know how to buy the time and the TVs or radios or billboards, whatever we want. And I think it's just very exciting, and I am completely behind this. I think it's a great art. I was at the subcommittee meeting and the advisory committee meeting when it was discussed at great length, and I thought it was great discussion and really appreciate what all of those people did to contribute to this. So that was my comment.
All right, thank you. Anybody else?
Bob, this is Vanessa. I just want to say that Karen, with involvement of Pete, but Karen and her team have really made a difference. And with resources, I believe that we will be able to reach even more people in and outside of the urban service districts. The drop-off program and all those, I really feel that with additional resources, I believe you guys will do what you are lawfully able to do, which is to make sure that all parts of Jefferson County are improved as far as solid waste, and I think we have a hell of a team. I know that we had fought to get Karen an increase, and we will still continue to do that. I think she and her team are worth so much that we are appreciative as professionals, public works people, that we have her on our team. Thank you.
Yeah, I can second that. Thank you, Vanessa.
Bob, this is Bruce.
Yes.
I do want you to know that this is being submitted to the 109 board for review and potential approval by unanimous vote of the advisory committee. So
Okay.
I just wanted you to be aware of that.
All right. Thank you, Bruce. Any other questions or comments? Now, as a matter of procedure, Pete, what you're asking us to do is approve the issuing of the RFP to the public, correct?
That's correct.
Any other questions or comments? Any questions or comments from other persons attending this meeting virtually? All right. Since this is an action item that potentially involves the expenditure of money, why don't we do a roll call vote, Pete?
Okay.
Bob, point of order. I don't think we have a motion in a second yet, but I'm happy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
I'm happy to make the motion.
Thank you, Mary Rose. Thank you very much. I'm jumping the gun there. Do we have a motion to approve?
I would be happy to make that motion. Yes.
Motion by Mary Rose.
Second. This is Deetra.
I'm sorry. We had a couple of people speaking together.
Oh, this is Deetra. Second.
Okay. Motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion or comments of this item? Okay, now, Pete, would you conduct a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Susan Hart,
Definitely yes.
Bob Lee,
Yes.
Mary Rose Evans,
Yes.
Deborah Thompson,
Yes.
Dietrich Shipley,
Yes.
and Bob Schindler.
Yes.
Did I miss anyone?
Carl, yes.
Carl.
Okay. Carl is a yes.
Okay.
So, motion passes, unanimous.
Thank you very much. Next item is the annual report for 2021, a request for an extension.
That's correct. It's actually becoming a habit for us. I think that most, we're unlike most counties in the state in which we have a lot more people that are licensed. We have a lot more information to collect. And they really give us very little time from the time that those reports are due to the time that the report has to be made. And this would be the fourth year for an extension. The state is always gracious enough to grant that extension. I believe that they understand our plight. So I just wanted to let you guys know that we would be applying for that for this extension, and hopefully by the end of by the next meeting that we'll have something in place for you guys to take a look at as far as our annual solid waste management plan report. Sorry.
Any questions?
I have a comment on this, if you don't mind. I don't want to get into the weeds very much. The data that's used in regards to this annual report is troublesome to get sometimes. And the one thing that I want to discuss, or at least let everyone knows, is on the last item on the question there has to do with rate information, required rate information. And it says Louisville Metro requires each collector operating in this county to give average monthly cost per household for each curbside service. And then it says under Louisville Metro Code of Ordinance, Chapter 51-300 requires all private haulers operating in the county as a condition of the license have a variable service rate structure for the respective residential customers. The definition of a variable service rate is the collection services pricing structure that allows customers to choose the frequency of collection and are the number of containers that may be placed out for service. And then it simply gives one direction, and that's that you have to have one number for curbside garbage collection, for recycling, yard waste, and others. My point being is that it references that you must have a variable service rate, and yet there is only one location in order to put an average number on a variable service rate, which for a company like Ecotech probably had a choice of around 40 or 50 different variable rates that we use. Now, the only reason I bring this up is because Pete and some of us know that this has come up in the subcommittee meetings and I think in the advisory committee meetings. And it is unfortunate that the report and therefore what is actually demonstrated in the final report is one number as opposed to the variable rates that most service providers give to their customers. And I think Pete has tried to work on this, and I'm guessing what I'm saying is that it's important to continue the work in order to try to find a good number that shows the variable rates for the individual customers that the service providers give to them.
Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, I totally agree with Bob. I think it's a much more complicated thing than what we do. And sometimes, we're trying to mix a state form and a metro form into our retract system. So um, I do believe, and I have worked to try to come up with a way that we can collect this data that would make sense. We have discussed it. I put together something. I think right now where I'm at is trying to get it together in a format that I can present it to the people that put these numbers in, that it's understandable on what we're trying to get to, and then allow them to kind of come up with some ideas on how we can do it better. I just have not gotten to that point where we can have all the individuals in to be able to do that. It is on my list to do, Bob. Uh, and I'm going to continue to work towards it. We've been really busy, and I know that that's an excuse, and it's really not acceptable. But we'll get to it, and I'll try to work on getting that done.
I appreciate the effort, Pete, and I know you are. The only thing I would like to see is that when we are addressing the issue as far as variable rates and what the average pricing is for residential services, that we always show the variable rates that are available as opposed to just a single uh, number for each service provider, which is what we've seen so far. So I know it's a lot of work, and let's continue to work on it if we can.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you a question, Pete. How much of this is the result of the state expecting a very simple answer out of a very complex county?
It's part of it. It always is when we start talking about the annual report. I would need to go back and take a look. I don't want to talk off the cuff because it's not been something that I've looked at recently. So I would rather go back and take a look at the forms the state has, what our ordinance says, what the KRS is telling me, to make sure I get all that back in my head before I really discuss it, because I don't want to tell anybody something that's incorrect, to give a bad answer, Bob. But I'll see if I can't get that. But to your point, I believe that's always been a problem when it comes to our annual report. We're just not any other county.
Yeah, as I remember some of the history of this, when the state first started this, and it may still be the case, but there could be any number of counties out there that there's only one waste hauler.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore there's only one price. And some of those questions are applied to get information for the state from numerous counties that don't have as many options as we have in Jefferson County, or as many service considerations that we have in Jefferson County. It was probably built to service the whole state in a much simpler format than we actually have operating here. Does you asking for an extension require action on our part?
I put it in the action items, Bob, but I'm not sure that it actually requires a vote of anything other than if you guys want to make a motion that we can go ahead and make that extension. I would think that would cover me when it comes to the state. So yeah, if you guys want to make a motion to allow my extension, I would appreciate it.
All right, can we have a motion to allow Pete to or allow the staff to request an extension?
I'll make that motion, Bob.
Bob Lee. Do we have a
Yes.
second?
Debbie Thompson, I'll accept. I'll make a second.
Deborah seconds the motion. We have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion of the board? All right, we have a motion and a second. Pete, would you call the roll, please?
Susan Hart,
Yes.
Carl Brazley,
Yes.
Robert Lee,
Yes.
Mary Rose Evans,
Yes.
Deborah Thompson,
Yes.
Deetra Shipley,
Yes.
Bob Shinnon.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Thank you all very much. Next item under action items, the approval of the MOA between the district and Brightside.
In your packets, you'll find a MOA between the Waste District, the Department of Public Works, and Brightside. And this agreement is needed to be in place for transfer of litter abatement grant funds. The grant is obtained by the Waste Management District each year. Metro actually does a lot of the work, and Brightside does some of the education and volunteer outreach. So in talking with Brightside, we set a new budget amount of $60,000 that would be an increase of $43,000. And one of the things that I think is important to this board is the Cash for Trash program that the state announced that we could use, which is we can pay nonprofit groups $100 per mile for cleaning in Jefferson County. We had talked with this at one point with the previous executive director who actually left. So we have another executive director, and in talking with her actually today, we confirmed that they would be good with earmarking $10,000 for the Cash for Trash program. So that is the only real change in the MOA from last year, the amount of 60, and then earmarking the 10,000 for the Cash for Trash program. Otherwise, it is just the same agreement. And I would ask if you guys could approve that.
Just one question, Pete. What was the amount last year for this same program?
Well, they didn't have the Cash for Trash last year, but the amount that Brightside got from the Waste District was $43,000.
43. Okay. So we're going to 17, and 10 of that is going to be for Cash for Trash. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I will say that Brightside did not use all their funds last year with COVID. I'm sure that have had a little bit of a hard time getting people out, but we was able to expend the funds through the Clean Collaborative. So that part is good. Overall, when you start talking about the litter abatement, we spent way more than what this grant provides. So I think this is a good agreement, and I'm glad that we're going to get the Cash for Trash program going. I think it's important.
And these funds are strictly state grant funds. This is not our general fund, so to speak, district money, correct?
That's correct, sir.
At a previous meeting, if I'm recalling correctly, you had mentioned something about, was Brightside behind on a report that they needed to give to us on the expenditures of these monies?
We have the expenditures report. What we're missing is the volunteer forms, so that we have to have proof that they was out there doing some cleanups. And we're missing that. And I've addressed that with Brightside. I think the turnover over there has had an impact on that. But no doubt about it, Brightside needs to do a better job of their documentation and getting that to us. We've been assured that we should be getting it any day now. But I think it's important that they abide by that MOA and get us the documentation when they say that they're supposed to.
Their failure to provide documentation, would that in any way affect the amount of money that we could possibly get from the state for this grant in previous years, in future years.
Yes. Failure to any time if we get audited and we can't provide the documentation to back this up, we put it with number one, we have to pay back those funds. And number two, it puts us in jeopardy in future years for receiving funds. And that would be a real shame because, you know, we have people that are out there collecting litter based upon this grant. So it's important. And, you know, we've been audited before. And I can tell you it was 6 months and it was tough. And I understand the importance of documentation, and we, the Department of Public Works, are very good at our documentation. We just need to get Brightside to get their part taken care of. It does put us at risk.
So, Pete, should we refuse the renewal of the MOA Brightside until they comply with the documentation? Can we do that?
Yeah, this board has every right to not sign the MOA and put conditions on it. Obviously, you know, it's a tough thing to do. Brightside's a great organization, and the fact that they get people out there to pick up litter is
Right.
what we want to do. But if so, this board absolutely does not have to approve this MOA until we get the documentation that we need.
There be any reason that would be detrimental to this whole grant process if we put this off for another month to see if they in fact satisfy your documentation needs?
Well, the only thing that it does is say that we cannot pay them anything this year until we have a signed MOA. If we don't, and basically by not signing it, we're saying that they have to provide the documentation that we need. And until then, they can't expend any money or expect any reimbursement for the calendar year of 2022.
So I guess maybe I'm putting too much on you, but based on Susan's question, would you see a downside if we said we're gonna hold off on this until the documentation is available?
No, sir.
Does any board member have a problem if we ask or instruct the staff to hold off on this for another month and see if we get the correct documentation? Well, then I would suggest that's the way we go. If no other board members have an objection to that, and if you don't think that hurts us any with the state in getting our grant money.
No.
All right. Well, I trust you will put this on the agenda again for next month.
Well, sir.
Again, does any board member have an objection to that?
I have a question, Bob.
Yes.
Will this interfere with the Cash for Trash program?
Yes, it would.
So, I mean, that's somewhat of a concern to me. If we have to wait a whole month, who is the actual person who signs this grant? Is it Bob or is it you, Pete?
The MOA is signed by Bob Schoen.
I guess, can we pass it with instructions to Bob to not sign it until you all have the documentation so that it could happen sooner than next month? Can we pass it saying Bob can sign this MOA as soon as we get the documentation from Brightside?
I'm not sure where that puts us. I would think that maybe Peter Irving can weigh in a little bit about if we sign it, are we obligated under it?
Right.
Is that what?
Saying
Is that,
to wait on the signature
oh, to wait on the signature.
until
Understood.
we get the documentation.
Understood.
We can say, we agree to this thing as long as we get the documentation, and we will sign it as soon as we do.
I think that would be fine.
Yeah,
Good.
the way I would interpret it is Mary Rose is saying the board approves the MOA, and they authorize me to sign it if we get the documentation.
Beautiful.
Excellent.
I like
That, yes.
Good.
Understanding that funds won't be released until they get the documentation there.
That would ensure that that does not take place. Yes.
Mary Rose, or would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
All right, thank you. Susan, we have a motion by Susan. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Susan, second by Deborah.
The
Is there any addition?
motion was by me, Pete, by Mary Rose.
Yes, by Mary.
Sorry.
I keep saying
Sorry.
Bob. I'm sorry.
Do we have any additional discussion?
I would just have to go
One
on the
question,
record.
Bob, do you feel comfortable taking that responsibility for us to see the documentation and sign?
Yeah, because basically what I'll be doing is taking Pete's assurance that
Sure.
the documentation he needs was in fact provided to him. Yeah, I have no problem with that. Do you have any problem with that, Pete?
No, sir.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Hearing no further discussion, since this involves an expenditure of funds, Pete, would you call the roll?
Carl Brazley,
Yes.
Susan Hart,
Yes.
Robert Lee,
No,
Mary Rose Evans,
Yes.
Petra Shipley,
Yes. Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Bob Schiller.
Yes.
Motion passes on a vote of 6-1.
All right, thanks everyone on that. Moving on to old business. Pete or Karen? The Monroe County facility tour.
Yeah, I think some of you all have responded to my inquiry on choosing a date. So we had a March date and an April date, and we went with the April 13th. So hopefully you guys all put that, I sent it as an invite, so it would go onto your calendar. If you don't have that and need me to send it again, I can. It would start at 10 a.m. at the facility. So the thought is leaving from Louisville, literally driving away by 8 a.m. And we can definitely work out some carpooling if anyone is interested. And then Pete has some information on this slide about that facility.
Yes, these are some of the items when I'm looking up. And what I would ask is Bruce Burrow, I'm not real sure which facility that we're talking about. This information is general from the Bloomington website, but the address, I'm not real sure which one it is. So, I mean, we're looking at a self-haul facility that accepts a lot of items so that we can kind of see how they do it when we consider any recommendations as it relates to self-haul in our county.
Pete, I believe this facility is at 3400 South Walnut Street in Bloomington. They have multiple facilities throughout the county, and at some they collect more than others. But this would be at the main facility, and the executive director is Tom McClassen, and he has agreed to meet us and discuss their efforts and what they've been able to accomplish. I guess from my perspective is if we can come up with a number of attendees, I think that would be greatly appreciated by Mr. McClassen.
I do
We'll just-
have the list from when people responded, so, but I can help coordinate that, Bruce, so that you have information beforehand.
All right, thank you, Karen.
Are there any questions or comments of the board members on that? Okay, we'll just await further instructions from Karen on that. In new business, you deleted item number 1. Item number 2 was Rumpke expanding a materials acceptance list.
Yeah, and Bruce or Hillary, if you guys want to speak to this, I kind of put together a summary from one of the documents that you guys had sent out. For us, I think this is really kind of an important thing in that it brings the items that's accepted overall in Jefferson County at the 2 MRFs closer together, which I think is a great thing. So Bruce, Hillary, you guys want to speak to this at all?
Yeah, Pete, thank you very much. This is Hillary, and I appreciate you putting together that slide. I actually have a couple of slides prepared, but
Go ahead, by all means, by all means.
okay, sure. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All righty. Can you all see what is on my screen? Is it the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so as Pete mentioned, we do have some changes that we recently announced to our acceptable items list at Rumpke. Just a quick overview, we recycle 1 billion pounds of material annually, and it is a variety of materials, including glass. We do have a glass processing plant in Dayton, Ohio, where we send all of our glass. And really our acceptable items list is dependent upon these long-term marketing contracts that we have with regional manufacturers. And we're very proud to say that virtually all the material that is processed by our facilities goes back into this region through our manufacturers and out into the world. So what's changing, as Pete mentioned, we are expanding our acceptable items list, or have expanded it to include disposable cups, to include paper cups, plastic cups, as well as aluminum cups. We've seen a rise in the use of aluminum cups, particularly with our, in stadiums and at festivals, and even in homes as well. So we wanted to make sure that we included the aluminum cup on the metal category as well. One note that I would like to say is that cups will not be accepted in Central Kentucky. We partner with the city of Lexington to process recyclables that we collect, and they do not accept cups at this time. So that is one caveat to the program. So here are just a couple of items related to the acceptance of cups. So again, we accept all disposable cups, paper, plastic, and aluminum. We ask that straws be removed prior to being placed into recycling containers. When it comes to lids, plastic lids can remain on plastic cups for recycling, but plastic lids from paper cups should be removed and discarded. We do not accept solo brand cups or any colored party cups because those are made from polystyrene. And we, unfortunately, at this time, do not have a secure long-term end user for polystyrene. No styrofoam cups, no K-cups are accepted. And we do want to make sure that people know what is happening to these items once they're placed in bins. So our plastic cups will be made into new plastic containers, and our paper cups are actually going to end up in our mixed paper bales, and they'll be made into cardboard and paperboard products. And of course, the aluminum cups will enter our aluminum bales and be turned into aluminum cans. So why now? Why are we making this announcement now? So we are always working with our partners, our end users, to expand solutions for additional recycling opportunities. And we have seen some innovations on both the sorting and processing side of things, as well as on the recycling technology that our end users have introduced in recent years. So on the technology side, we have installed at this point 5 total robotics in our Cincinnati MRF. And that technology really uses artificial intelligence to properly sort by container shape. And so these pictures that you see here on the screen are of a couple of our robots. But this technology has really allowed us to grow our expandable items list, to be able to effectively recover paper and plastic products on the plastic side, specifically polypropylene. We're very excited about that. So that's the technology side. On the industry side, paper mills, specifically paper mills that we partner with, have recently pledged to accept paper cups. So in previous years, as you probably know, in paper cups, there is a poly lining in cups that protects the liquid from the paper cup. And there's been innovations inside paper mills to be able to essentially break down that fiber enough to be able to move it through the paper machine and turn that fiber into corrugated containers. So again, these innovations on the mill side have really led to our confidence in being able to expand our acceptable items list and be able to know that the items that we say we're accepting, we know that we have a long-term home for. And that is priority number 1 for Rumpke, is making sure that what we accept is in fact recycled. So as you can see here on the screen, these are just some of the paper mills across the country that did make that pledge to accept paper cups. So in all, this is our acceptable items list. We, a year or so ago, did expand our plastic category to include plastic tubs, specifically polypropylene tubs, sour cream, butter tubs, yogurt tubs, those kinds of containers. And again, with the expansion of cups, we're able to add those into the plastic category, as well as adding those to the paper and the metal cans in cups category. So we're really excited, and I agree with you, Pete. We are becoming a bit more aligned with our acceptable items list from an education standpoint. It makes it a bit easier to communicate what we accept here in and around Louisville. And so I really appreciate the time to be able to share this information tonight. And if there are any questions now, please feel free to ask, or even after this call, I am available for email or phone. So thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. And just a question and or a comment, I guess, for the benefit of anybody who may be watching this. This is what you all will accept at your processing facility, correct?
That is correct, in our single stream material recovery facility. Yes.
And any decision as to whether any individual on the street collector of materials would be communicated to their customers directly from them. So people shouldn't just take this as a blanket invitation to put this in their bin, because there is the possibility that some people listening to this are in this community may not have the Rumpke facility as the end result of the recycling collected at curbside. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes, absolutely. I think as a processor, we certainly work with our partners to make sure that they have, the proper communications and marketing tools to share this widely. But individual haulers should, be communicating out the acceptable items list based on the processor that they partner with in that specific community. So yes, that is correct.
I think that's really good news, though, that you all are able to expand that. Is there any questions or comments from board members on this item? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Bruce and Hillary, very much for that presentation. Congratulations. Next item, number 3. I think you have we have a presentation to the board. Pete.
You're on mute,
Pete.
There we go. I just wanted to introduce Andy, Government and Community Affairs Manager with Waste Management. He's going to give a presentation that he did give to the advisory committee from the National Waste and Recycling Association. So, Andy, if you want to share, do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll go ahead and share my screen just so I can move, as we go. I appreciate that.
Sounds good.
You all are the lucky winners. You get back-to-back PowerPoint presentations tonight. So I will try to keep this as quick as I can without, rushing through things and making it ineffective. If that comes through. Might take a second just to. All right. Is everybody seeing the presentation on the screen? Okay.
Yeah.
Just some brief context here. This is a presentation that we had given to the advisory committee. As you all know, the advisory committee is tasked right now with reviewing some of the recommendations made in the executive summary of the solid waste master plan and has divvied those recommendations up to various subcommittees. To review and then bring back to the advisory committee and ultimately the 109 board. So what we wanted to do is sort of, come back. I think there's a tendency, when you're looking at a lot of granular detail to get lost in the weeds a little bit. And we wanted to sort of refocus the expectations and goals in a positive way, not in any way in a critical way, but just to bring everybody back to center a little bit, before they get their final recommendations back to the committee as a whole. So the very first slide here is just to show, and all of the data here, with the exception of one picture, is actually from the executive summary itself. So anything you see in here is directly from the report. This just shows the short and long-term diversion goals laid out in the executive summary. As you can see in the middle here, between the 2016 start date and the 2042 end goal, there is a decision point of 2026, and then the recommendations are broken down between short-term and long-term goals. Short-term, expanding service, waste reduction, education. So it's basically getting the wheels spinning until you can get to some sort of critical mass where you can then make a decision about how best to proceed as a city and as a waste district to get from an intermediate point to that sort of zero waste final goal. And if anybody has any questions during any of this, please, ask me to repeat anything or clarify. One of the things that's pointed out though on that slide previously is that 90% diversion is actually not the goal. We use that as sort of a shorthand term, but the actual goal itself is 90% diversion of recoverable materials by 2042 and 90% participation in recycling programs. So it was, I believe Mayor Fisher referred to it as the 90 and 90 program as the goal. What that means though is that it's not diversion of 90% of all materials. It's two moving targets. How much are we diverting, and how much of the material that is in the waste stream is actually recoverable? How much can we send someplace for a beneficial use? The short-term goal that we're actually tasked with getting to right now is actually 58% diversion, not that 90% total. We want to get to a point where we can then make a decision on how best to proceed. In 2016, the diversion rate was 49%. So we still have a good ways to go to increase, but the hill in front of us to what our interim goal isn't quite so insurmountable. Why that 90% of recoverable materials matters though is that the waste characterization study that was done as part of the solid waste master plan showed that currently about 34% of materials that are in the landfill right now actually are not recoverable. Meaning even if we took them out and put them in another pile and said they are diverted from the landfill, we wouldn't have an outlet for them. So there are two different places that we can focus: how to keep things out of the waste stream, and also how to increase the pie for what has a beneficial reuse at the end. So right now, the most we can really get to without changing that second number is about 70%. So we have a cap on what we can do if we don't focus on expanding what is considered recoverable. Just wanted to break down the diversion by sector. We're broken out. This is the way that the subcommittees are broken out from the advisory committee. We've got residential, ICI, self-haul, C&D. As you can see, C&D actually has the greatest percentage that is actually diverted right now. It's about 81%. The two areas that we're actually focusing on the most in the subcommittees is residential, which only has about an 18% diversion rate, and self-haul, which has only about a 7% diversion rate. It's important to note, though, that even though self-haul actually shows a lower percentage diversion, the self-haul portion of the pie is actually a lot smaller than residential. It's less than a third of the total overall amount. So we should be focusing on both of those things for sure, but what we do when discussing residential waste is going to have a much larger impact than self-haul. So this is just reiterating some of the statements from the executive summary. In the short term, that period from 2016 to 2026, they recommend scaling up implementation of pilot programs, developing incentives for waste reduction, expanding service, meaning providing additional outlets for people to actually participate in recycling, and then limited regulation. So start promoting and incentivize recycling, get people used to the concept that aren't doing it now, and then focus on adding regulation to push things over the top after that 2026 point. And another thing to keep in mind here is that, and this is the one slide that is actually not from the executive summary, this is from the EPA. This shows their hierarchy of food recovery. So it's using organic and food waste as an example. And I use this because the city did have a pilot program, as most of you are aware, for wet, dry, and organic separation downtown and in some of the business districts in Nulu. So the higher up the higher up the pyramid that you focus, the more impact you're going to have. And it basically says the earlier in the process you can remove the material that you want to keep out of the landfill, the more impactful you're going to be. Not just in terms of the diversion percentage, but in the impact on greenhouse gas reduction, et cetera. So if you can keep food from ever getting on a truck, you're better off than you are taking it to a composting facility. Composting is still better than landfilling, but composting is at some place like Smith Creek or Waste Management is not as good as somebody composting in their backyard. So another one of the pilot programs that I know that that Pete had mentioned in one of the previous meetings was trying to get composters to residents so that they could do it in their backyard. That kind of thing has a much greater impact if you can get it up to scale than something like just sending it to Waste Management so that we can use it for alternate daily cover or to donate to beautification projects. So again, creating incentives to reduce the amount of material entering the waste stream is the preferred option here. So a couple of the industry recommendations that we made and things that the industry is committed to doing as part of this. Metro Code 51300 right now sets a requirement of any hauler operating in Jefferson County must offer weekly curbside trash collection and every other week recycling and seasonal yard waste every other week. Those are the minimum requirements. What the industry is proposing is an update to that code to require offering cart-based recycling. So right now, the minimum requirement is only an 18-gallon bin every other week. So effectively 9 gallons of recycling every week for every resident. If we were to move that to a 96-gallon cart, every other week at a minimum, again, not necessarily taking services that are currently weekly back to every other week, the minimum capacity would increase from 9 gallons to 48 gallons. So you would be seeing a 500% minimum offering for recycling residentially. That's a significant expenditure in capital, based on the numbers that are presented in the executive summary of residents in the unincorporated areas who either have bin-based recycling or no recycling. That would be a capital commitment from the industry of about $5 to $7.5 million. I work for Waste Management. We're already starting that process of trying to get everyone converted over. We have about 5,000 customers right now that we have lined up that we're trying to get conversions made. We've already started that process. The other recommendation that we had, which was part of the discussion around self-haul facilities, and I believe Bruce Blue actually brought this up at the last meeting of one of the subcommittees, is for the industry to provide support for the satellite self-haul drop-off events, and to potentially use some of the staffed recycling centers as locations for those events, if possible, to try to use some of that infrastructure. Again, that would require the willingness of Metro to do that and make sure that everything logistically makes sense to do that. But the industry has the ability to provide assistance in the form of trucks, containers, staffing, to do it on in a safe way, in an environment that is designed specifically for residential vehicles to come in and drop material off, rather than trying to introduce those vehicles into areas where we've got industrial trucks, going in and out of areas with limited space. And here you go, very last slide, and then I will shut up. Some of the things that we would like to see from Metro and that the industry just does not have the ability to do, is to focus on creating incentive programs for waste reduction. And part of the thing, one of the ideas that we have is, having Metro incentivize or require use of recovered materials in city contracts and RFPs. For example, if we want to get shingles out of the waste stream, one of the ways to increase the market or create a market for that is to have city road contractors, have some sort of incentive in the RFP or requirement in the RFP to use recovered materials or a percentage of recovered materials for that project. And then also just to work with industry to create commodity markets for the percentage of the waste stream that's not currently recoverable. So you just heard a presentation from Rumpke about trying to find end markets. They currently don't have a market for polystyrene number 6. Is there something that we can do to try to create that market, or other C&D materials or residential materials that that we can work together to try to create those markets? Because the very last point here, supply doesn't create its own demand. If we focus right now solely on diversion and how to get material out of the waste stream, we're not guaranteeing that anything actually comes from that diversion. We can put it in a pile next to the landfill and say job done, but we really need to start focusing on how we get that material out of the waste stream as early as possible and to a beneficial use that is consistent and we can count on long term. So I apologize for the length of that, but I'm happy to answer any questions or clarify anything that was presented.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Do we have questions or comments from board or the audience? I think there's some very interesting comments you made there, and you said something about Bruce Blue had made a suggestion that maybe industry could somehow become involved in using existing resources such as the drop-off centers. That might, I'm assuming you mean if we could offer a little bit of additional things that people could get rid of at those centers, that would make it then easier for them a little more convenient for them, and rather than trying to have trucks running up and down streets and doing special collection programs. Am I reading that the right way?
No, I think that's correct, and I think it was, at least initially considered to have it as special events. If it was on a weekend, to have some of the events that Metro has already run located at those facilities, or try to expand what's accepted for a weekend, so that people have an outlet for that material. Maybe not necessarily, all the time, just because it becomes a space and a staffing issue. To run that every day, but that's obviously a Metro consideration. But I think at the minimum, trying to do it much like they do the satellite events now.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
This is Bob Lee.
Yeah.
The National Waste and Recycling Association appreciates Andy's remarks, and of course, it does represent what the association means, and it has our full support, as was discussed prior to the presentation. It's interesting that everything that was presented is within the scope of the existing study. I think that was important. The other thing is that recommendations, we were even much more than recommendations in regards to the issue of the 96-gallon carts. That surely seems like that should be a very positive note in regards to the study and the opportunity in order to recycle more material in the residential line of business. And I would hope and anticipate that there would be more discussion concerning the presentation in the comments from the board and from maybe some of the maybe possibly the subcommittees that would entertain looking at our presentation and going forward with some comments and recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Any other questions or comments? Again, Andy, thank you. That's some interesting points you brought up there. If there's no other questions and comments, we'll move on, try to stay within our schedule here. Advisory committee, I'm sorry, the Urton Lane recycling drop-off site.
Yes, I just wanted to let you guys know that it may come, we're hoping to kind of to delay this a little bit, but we had a request from Anchorage and Middletown Fire and EMS to move our recycling containers from the Middletown fire department because they had some increased use that they needed for the area. They're having some drill school classes and they just need the space. They've been a great partner, and we don't hold this against them for asking us to do this because they play a vital role. But it does put us in a bit of a bind. This is our busiest unstaffed recycling center in the county, having 55 tons of recycling go through there per month. We are constantly out there emptying those, and it is used by a lot of people. We are looking for a new site. We have searched and searched. There isn't too many government type buildings out there, so we're looking at any building with a big parking lot, and it does need some space because the containers that we're talking about that we've got 4 30-yard roll-offs at the site right now. And we want to switch this off to the 8-yard front loads. We had already been thinking about getting a second site close by just to take pressure off of this site. So we're not having much luck. And what this may end up being is that we're going to have to remove those dumpsters before we have another location. And if we do, I'm sure that a lot of people in that area are going to be disappointed and upset. that it has been removed. So before you guys hear of this controversy, we wanted to let you guys know that it may be coming. We want to at least slow it down with some signage saying that we're going to be moving. The last thing we want to do is just pull up all of our dumpsters and leave, because what we would end up with is huge piles of recycling dumped on the ground. The fire department wouldn't be happy. We wouldn't be happy. Nobody would be happy, because it would be in every place and every parking lot around there. So I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on this. It's not the greatest of situation, but one that we're just going to have to, we're working to find a solution, but worst comes to worst, just be prepared. There'll be a pretty big outcry, I believe.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. Just a couple of comments. One thing that bothers me is that with this being the busiest site in the county, if we can't use it anymore, how many people out of frustration might quit doing that period because it's not going to be as convenient, or they might quit and might not come back if we're successful in finding another site. That's worrisome. The other thing that occurred to me was, could you all talk with the people in the city media offices? I wonder if this could be sold as a possible news story, that the busiest drop-off site in the county, that we're in danger of losing it because, the fire department, obviously, they've got business that they've got to do and training they've got to do, and they were gracious enough to give us the space all these years. I wonder if there's the possibility of, if you could sell it as a newsworthy story, that we're desperately looking for another place to do it. Maybe something would pop up by somebody seeing this on the air.
I think it's a possibility. Karen, what do you think that we can bring this up with Sal?
Yeah, I
see
can
if they
talk
would
to
be
Sal.
interested. Yeah.
I mean, you'd obviously have to do a story or try to control the story to make sure that we're not, by no means are we criticizing Anchorage and Middletown Fire Department.
Right.
But that, we're in a jam, and a whole lot of people are going to be disappointed, and we're going to miss a whole lot of recycling, and we're desperately looking for another place to do this.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Bob, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are we as a board allowed to own land? Can we buy a piece of land for us to have this recycling center on?
I would think that before we do that, Mary Rose, we would want to look to lease some space if we have to. And I've already, the people that look for this site for us with Metro, they ask me that question: can you pay anything? We've never done that before in the past, but I told them if it comes down to that, to be able to make it happen, we would be willing to make that decision to lease some property. I think
we have some money in the bank, and it doesn't matter if you have money in the bank or money in land. It's still going to be our money, and we can still sell the land and use the money for whatever else we need to use it. I mean, I just think it would be another investment for us. So it was just a thought. So
I would.
It's worth considering.
Absolutely. I wouldn't throw it out. What I would say is that area is highly developed.
It's going to be expensive land.
Yeah. And right there on that Shelbyville Road, pretty hot properties right through there. We do have to have a pretty big space, so it wouldn't be a little piece of property. It has to be something pretty big.
Pete, how big a property are you talking about? I have an idea, but I'm just curious how big you're thinking.
Possibly, I would say half an acre. Bruce, Bob, Lee, y'all might give me a little bit, enough for us to put about 12 front load dumpsters and be able to operate a front load truck to empty them is what we need.
I'll get back with you, and I have an idea of a property in J-Town. But let me check and then I'll get back with you.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I've got a couple of possible suggestions, but I'll send them to you in email. I don't want to broach it out on the air like this.
Oh, Pete,
I had the thought that we should check with the mayors of some of those cities out there and see what they know about in terms of what their city may own or whatever. I mean, I think that we could talk to some of those mayors, and I'm happy to do that. So,
Mary Rose, I would appreciate that. With what we did was we took and did a zip code survey. Obviously, it's a 24/7, so we would only do it for certain times a day. And we were getting a lot of people, primarily just outside of the Gene Schneider in unincorporated areas. So I think that any place that we go, we would try to stay where there's a main corridor that's coming underneath of that Gene Schneider, instead of the Gene Schneider can kind of cut things off on us. So strategic placement is very important as what we do. But yes, please, anywhere that we can kind of find a location to investigate, that would be great, and I would appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much, Pete. Can we move on to advisory committee report?
Good afternoon, Chairman Schindler, and I do want to say that with all the efforts put forth by the advisory committee and subcommittees, we are actually moving forward, believe it or not.
Good.
I believe the tour up at the Bloomington Solid Waste Management District, Monroe County, is going to give us some insight as to the self-haul component. The RFP for the public education outreach campaign, I think, is huge, that we can start moving forward with that. And there's been, I'll just say, spirited conversation and debate amongst the members of the subcommittees, which is a good thing. Everybody has their points of view that they're freely expressing. And I believe, Pete, if I'm not mistaken, you've had a meeting with J.D. Carey with regard to the apartment association and multifamily units or complexes regarding a pilot program. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Karen and I both met with the J.D. Carey and had a great discussion about recycling in multifamily properties. As most people know, it's a tough place to do recycling just by the nature and the different circumstances under which most of these places are laid out, the size, the shape, and such. So we certainly agree with the apartment association on the difficulties of solid waste management at their facilities, even with or without recycling in certain places. But we have agreed that we would work with a committee of the apartment association to do some best practices, to get some learnings, and to try to find out what we can do to increase recycling at multifamily properties. So we're really excited about that. And there was also discussion about the agenda item that was struck from tonight in finding some way to get recycling at new construction, because what the single most difficult thing when it comes to multifamily is space in existing structures, existing places. So looking to the future, I think that there's been some discussion and wishes that we could work with the Land Development Code to maybe make some recommendations there. But I think that the topic is going to take some more discussion, certainly. And speaking with JD, he wants to talk to some of the developers or engineers that design these to get their thoughts before we make any kind of a suggested thing to take back to the advisory committee before we bring back to you guys.
The reason that was stricken from the agenda tonight, Chairman Schindler, was that has not been in front of the entire advisory committee for vote yet.
Okay.
So once that vote is taken, then it'll be elevated to the level of the 109 board.
All right.
With that, we will continue to involve stakeholders and get their input. But the education component, as Karen said, touches on 11 topics within the study. And I think gaining the buy-in of the community through the education component will be a great motivation to accomplish a higher recycling rate of than what we have today.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Okay, anything else, Bruce or Karen?
And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. And again, on behalf of the board, thanks to all the effort that that you and Karen and all the members of the advisory committee and subcommittees put in on this. Staff report.
Well, I wanted to share with you all that as last year we started the No Waste Ambassador program. And so this year we just finished Monday actually a 7-week training. We did it all virtual again. And then for the spring, we'll do tours for these trainees of various facilities. We had some guest speakers, specifically people from our advisory committee, like Matt Smith and a representative from West Rock and so on. And we have 9 ambassadors from last year and 10 more that are trained now for this year. So with our newest trainees, you never know. Sometimes they may realize they don't want to be in this program based on the efforts, but so far we have 19 total. So I'm really excited to not only have a base of people that can help with our volunteer at some of our outreach events and things like that, but we're just kind of amplifying our message by training people who already care and already many of them are involved in their communities, and they can kind of be liaisons for the information, waste related information, to keep spreading throughout the community. So I think it's a great program and I'm excited that it continues to grow, and I wanted you all to know about it. I didn't have any photos or anything because so far we've just had WebEx meetings, but eventually we'll be doing some tours and things, and I'll share more as we go along.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Questions from the board, comments? All right, thank you very much. I guess I'm going to call on Bob Lee for this one. Bob, you requested that this Kentucky Attorney General opinion be put on the agenda tonight. Would you have any comments you want to make on this, or?
Well, yeah, and we're running out of time, and I would anticipate that this would require some additional conversation at other meetings. But, you know, this particular opinion specifically addresses the issue in regards to what we have to if someone can simultaneously be on the board, the 109 board, as well as a home rule appointed appointed piece from a home rule or from a municipal city. You know, it has implications on the status of quite a few people on the board. As a matter of fact, you know, it has been a concern for some current board members, as well as ones that were on the board that had to be eliminated because of the position that Metro government takes. So I would hope that we would be able to talk about this later on at another meeting, possibly the next meeting, to determine just what effect it has on the board itself.
Yeah, we have, this has, Pete assures me that the mayor's office is aware of this. The mayor's office is the appointing authority for the members of the solid waste management board. So there's, that it's basically the ball is in their court right now as far as what effect that opinion has on the current makeup of the board. So I would expect that, and just assuming, Pete, that you will continue to keep us either through the mayor's office or through the office of the county attorney, any effect this will have on the makeup of the board.
Bob, I'm obviously the person that this involves the most. I am a commissioner for the city of Parkway Village, and the mayor's office did not want to recommend me to the Metro Council for reappointment because of that, of having two positions that were both sworn positions. At this point, I think that what I'll do is get in touch with the person in the mayor's office who makes the recommendations to the mayor, and then see if they'll go ahead and recommend me to the council. I am willing to continue to serve if they're going to present me to the council. At this point, they don't have a reason not to. I mean, that was the only reason that they didn't. Yeah. They wanted me to be on the board. They just had a concern about that. So I'm happy for the favorable opinion from the Attorney General, and I will pursue it. They decided to let me, which is what should happen. They let me stay on the board and continue to vote until a decision was made by the Attorney General. So I'm happy to be out of the clouds, I guess, and
yeah,
clear territory. So thank you, Bob.
I would hope that that's the position that they take. I would anticipate that the solid waste management district is concerned about this and would consider some kind of opinion that they might render in regards to helping out the answering the question. We have Bruce Blue on the line that lost his position because of this. So it's not only in regards to yourself, Mary, but to a lot of others. We need to get to the end of it in order to determine just what effect it has on our board members.
Any other questions or comments? All right, as I said, Pete, you will, I'm sure, make sure that we find out as expeditiously as possible if any actions are taken regarding this.
Yeah, I'll try to keep a finger on it, but as from my standpoint, it's really all that work does take place out of my office, so to speak.
Yeah.
If they give me an opinion, then I will certainly be passing it back. Yeah. But they typically do their opinions in writing. When it comes to the legal side of things, I am a fish out of water. So I kind of leave that to those people.
Oh, no, I'm not implying anything otherwise other than
okay, no
just
problem.
Keep us posted, because with the mayor being the appointing authority, there's really nothing that we as a board can take any action on, any official action on. So we just have to sit back and wait and see what effect this has or where it goes from here. Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Announcements.
Next 109 board meeting is March 23rd at 5:30, and the next residential construction and demolition subcommittee is March 9th, and the self-haul ICI and the advisory committee is on March 16th. And as always, a reminder that all of these items are on the Waste District's website, which is LouisvilleWasteDistrict.org. Anybody can go there to look up the next meeting, agendas, minutes, recordings, and the like. So with that, I don't have any other announcements.
Just a correction, the residential C&D subcommittee is March 8th,
Thank you, Karen.
just in case anyone was writing that down.
Thank you.
So noted. Are there any other questions, comments from anybody in attendance tonight? Okay, hearing none, I guess we will call the meeting in.
We get a motion, Bob, motion.
Oh, yeah. Can we have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved. This is Deetra.
Second? Do we have a second? All right.
Susan Hart.
Susan, second. Okay. We have a motion to adjourn and a second. Any additional comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Bye.
Thank you all very much, everybody, for attending tonight.
Thank you.
Bye.
Sorry, we ran over just a little bit.
Thank you all.
See you, everyone. All right, I've got to run. Pete,
Yes, sir.
I will, I do have a couple of possible suggestions for that, places to put that, which you may already have considered, because one of them may be fairly obvious, but I'll get to you. I didn't want to put it out online.
I understand. Just
or on
send
the
it to
air.
me. I do appreciate it, and hopefully we can get something, because I don't want to lose that tonnage. And you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. I think a lot of people will throw their hands up.
Yeah.
And that would be unfortunate.
Yeah. I really wasn't aware that was that busy of a site.
Oh, it's crazy. We
Yeah.
literally, it's almost impossible to keep up with. We're emptying a 30-yarder about every 16 hours on average.
Wow. Damn.
Yeah, can't keep up.
All right. Well,
I thought that was a good meeting. I appreciate us getting that one done. I like what you guys did with